Are you an ambitious, driven entrepreneur starting to feel overwhelmed, maybe a little trapped by your business? Well, I have a solution for you. It is the 5-day Bottleneck to Breakthrough Challenge, where in an hour a day, we will give you the roadmap, the blueprint, the treasure map to where you can find yourself with more free time, more freedom of money, and a more valuable business. Hope to see you soon. www.bottlenecktobreakthrough.com. Hello and welcome to The Real Bottom Line, the podcast by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. On the show, we talk a lot about building a valuable company. And one of the key measures of value is how dependent is the business on you and the quality of your team. Our guest today, Erin Longmoon, is the founder and CEO of Zephyr Connects. And she is located in Cleveland, but does business around North America. And she is at the company that helps build teams. Hello and welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Wendy. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Building team is such a daunting thing.
Yeah.
For so many entrepreneurs. But let's talk about your journey into entrepreneurship first.
Oh my God.
How did you become the founder of Zephyr?
Well, that's a long story. This is actually my fifth venture into entrepreneurship. So
Okay.
I'm just kind of wired to be an entrepreneur. But this is the true business. A lot of my other entrepreneurial journeys were a lot of lifestyle businesses and things to just, put food in my own mouth. This one, I decided it was time to go bigger and have a bigger impact. And it started back in, 2014 or so. I decided to be a business coach. And that was my passion, was working with entrepreneurs and really helping them to create systems and processes and get all of the institutional knowledge out of their head and into a format so that they could grow. And inevitably what would happen is that then it would become time to hire. We would be ready for them to start bringing in other people, and then come to find out they still didn't quite, because they needed people. They didn't have the time to do it, or they would make knee-jerk reactions in who they hired. They just weren't really doing the best job. It's an expertise that they didn't have.
Yes.
And I had gained that expertise over the years in various aspects of my career. So I started offering it as a service, to my clients. And these are all small business entrepreneurs, owner operated small businesses. So I started doing it as a service. And then really the writing was on the wall about 2 or 3 years in that this was really what people needed the most, that they didn't have a solid resource for. So I pivoted the company, and Zephyr was born in 2017. So that's how we got here.
Well, and it's, if you think about it, unless we are hiring, how do we ever get that skill set as an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
I think back. So this is a number of years ago, but Erin, we kept hiring the same person in the sense that they had high sociability, high verbal reasoning. So every time we would start asking the questions, they had a really fast response. And we had somebody who was helping us with our assessment tools. He goes, "Oh, that's funny. They have almost the same profile as the last person." And you're like, we're hiring the same people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Every time, because we liked them and they were very social and they had all the right answers, but we didn't have the skills to dig past that.
Right. And that is very true too. A lot of times people hire, who they resonate with, and they see themselves in that person, or they see a familiarity like, hey, you're like all of my friends, or you're like all of my entrepreneurial peers, come on board. And, obviously for some positions that might be a good decision, right? But for other positions, it's totally counter to what you really need, and then it creates a team too of a lot of similarly minded and similarly skilled people, which, you need diversity of mind, thinking, and skill sets and backgrounds and experiences, all of that. Yeah, exactly. So if you really want to scale or grow a business, at some point you got to pivot and get really serious about who are we bringing on and getting intentional and tactical about those decisions.
Oh, I love that, Erin. You remind me of my favorite quote. If you work with a yes person, one of you is redundant.
I love that. I never heard that, Wendy. That is great. So true. So true.
Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
now we are like you're
Almost
year like
8. Yeah. 7
7
and a
or
half.
8.
Yeah. 7.5,
Wow.
something like
What has
that.
been the biggest challenge about growing your business?
Wow. So many. What's the biggest? I mean, partially my mindset, I think, and I
Tell me
see
more about
this.
that.
Yeah. I think entrepreneurs, like my own belief system and my own limiting thoughts would get in the way of my ability to either, I mean, I'm a pretty courageous person. I'm pretty wired to be courageous. I'm the
Yeah.
person who easily would go do something a little bit extreme. So it's not really like I wasn't courageous, but my mindset about just limiting beliefs and like what's possible, scarcity mindset things sometimes would creep in, blinders of what's, just my own mind and thoughts would get in the way, and so I would have, I started recognizing that because I'm pretty interested in self like improvement and self growth and growth
Yeah.
mindset stuff. So, it's just the writing started showing up on the wall of there's really nobody stopping our progress but me. And
Mm,
so what do I have to do? So I started working with a mindset coach. I started reading more books around mindset and started opening up and started realizing how powerful just my own thinking is to the actual results that we achieve. So, it was an aha moment. It was a pivot, and I'm
mm.
constantly working on it. But I would say that's had the biggest
When did
impact.
that happen for you, Erin? Like what year were you in? When did it and how did that show up?
I would say, okay, so it wasn't a moment, right? Like that I
Okay.
would like to say it was a single moment. It wasn't, but I would say probably around year 3.
Mhm.
And I think one of the reasons why it started showing up is because we were growing, like
Yep.
I went from myself, I had my first hire in early 2019, had a second hire in 2019, but 3 years in, I now have a team of 8 or so people,
Wow.
right? And all the things that come with that, having to develop those processes, having to develop culture, I had to develop as a leadership. It's like I did wake up one day and I was like, okay, I'm no longer just an entrepreneur. I am now a business owner with a team, and I am
Yes.
a leader. And I had to stop and kind of, look at, well, what kind of leader do I want to be?
Mhm.
And what do I want to create? And it wasn't that I had like big problems in my business. I'll be honest. I was lucky. I think I saw it before problems arose.
Yes.
And a lot of my dream, I was just telling someone earlier today over a coffee that I had that my biggest teacher has been actually watching people do things the way that I don't want to do them, right? Versus mentors of like showing me how I do want to do them. And I actually think that was a really powerful teacher for me to work for different entrepreneurs who are really doing things the way where I was like, that just doesn't like resonate with the way I would want to do it, which is one of the reasons why I'm an entrepreneur, because I just wanted to do it my way, right?
Yep.
But because of that ability, I also stopped a lot and stopped myself and go, okay, how do I make sure we don't end up there? How do we make sure we don't
Yes.
end up there? Just by asking a lot of curiosity questions. And so as we grew, and all of a sudden I've got this team, we need real processes. We're actually growing. This is looking like it's a legitimate business for the first time. Like maybe this is actually going to be
Oh my
something,
gosh, it's gonna work.
right? This is going to actually work. Then I was like, all right, I got to buckle down and get serious. And what do I really want to create? And I think those kind of questions is what really opened that up to the idea of like, this is all up here,
Absolutely. On
Yeah.
your LinkedIn description, one of the things, or it was on your bio, I think, or one of the places you talked about
Mhm.
how to complement what you're just saying is like you've really stepped into the CEO role,
Right.
right?
Right.
So making that shift. So there's mindset work, but I think I think the biggest, bravest thing is to realize that you can do bigger things.
Yeah.
You can think big.
Mhm.
And I think it's a huge hurdle for a lot of entrepreneurs to cross that chasm, if you will.
Right, right. I think I see that too because I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs, as I'm sure you
Yeah.
are too, just being one yourself. And so I totally agree. And I do think that's where a little bit of the courage comes into play and this trust that you have
Right.
to have. And I don't know, I made the decision, early on when I was like, I want to create a real company that has a huge impact, way bigger than just my community. I want it to really, really resonate. And I want by the time I'm done to look back and really feel like I did, and my company did something that was really powerful in its world,
Yeah.
And so because I wanted that ability to dream big, I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to do that unless I get this company much bigger and we reach more people.
Yes.
So I just kind of had to let go of the fear. I was like, I cannot, like, I have the fear sometimes for sure. Like right now, I just hired 2 salespeople when I only was intending on one. But I love, they both have such strengths. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do both, man. This is scary because I'm investing in something I wasn't really planning. And I'm going to just take a leap of faith. And I was like, I've got the fear, but I'm going to do it anyway, And I think that is a huge mindset shift that I think if you really do want something bigger than just like a lifestyle business or a small company, which is totally great. I mean, I think there's such a place for that too. But if you want something bigger, you got to be able to let go of that and do things in spite of that fear.
Yeah. And there are lifestyle businesses and people who have just replaced the work with a company and a growth company like yourself. And there's no right way. It's got to be what's right for you.
Right. Exactly.
Not
100%.
what should you be as a business owner and how big should it be?
Right. I definitely agree with that. And I don't know when I made the decision, honestly, between you and me, that I was like, I want this to be way bigger than just
honey,
my backyard. But
in you since you were little and you have no control over it.
Yeah, probably.
I
totally agree. I mean, that is the way I have lived my life for sure. Big and bold. I mean, definitely.
Oh, big and bold. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That is such an interesting part of your journey. I really appreciate you sharing that. I'd like to dig into a little bit on the side of, because you're recruiting, you're helping build team for small companies. What do you see? What are the biggest mistakes that small companies like owner-managed enterprises are making when they're hiring?
Well, one of the biggest ones, the one you touched upon,
Yeah.
is hiring mini me's, like people who you're like, yeah, we had a great conversation. We talked all about our hobbies and we really resonated, and just hiring someone that you like without really doing the vetting due diligence and being intentional. That is definitely one of the first ones I see, especially with like entrepreneurs who are making their first, second, third hires,
Right.
when they're kind of small and it's the first real venture that they have, hiring friends, hiring family members, unless it's intended to be a family run business, but just like, I'm going to hire my cousin because my cousin needs a job. And sure, that unfortunately that can really, really backfire. It is on so many levels, right? It's so rare that it works out. So the ones that I see, the entrepreneurs I see that really build strong, effective teams, have drawn the line in the sand on that, and they're really clear about that. So that's a big hiring mistake too. And it's really common to do as your first few hires because you don't know how to hire, you
go to what
yeah. And I think that's the other thing is honestly giving yourself grace. Learning who's the right employee for your company takes time. It takes mistakes. It takes error. So just be okay if you make hiring mistakes. Be okay if that person that you first hired ended up being an unfortunately, like, not the greatest employee. Maybe they sucked a lot of your time, maybe whatever it was. It's okay. Just put your pull your boots back up and do it again and do it again. And every single time learn something new about why that person wasn't the right hire. And I think that's the other mistake I see is people will make a mishire right out of the gate and it stops them from ever wanting to do it again.
Agreed.
Right. And that is such a shame. That's such a shame. So
yes. So it's not really a mistake. It's just part of your learning curve. To be a good boss and a good builder of team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it could take you 15 times, but just trust that every time you're getting it, you're going to get better and better and better. Right.
You're sifting and sorting the right person's next.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. Okay. Best onboarding tips. Because I feel like you can hire the right person, but if you don't integrate them, you might not get as much out of that person as you could.
Yes. And I think one of the things I'm so excited about this question is that there's more research coming out, and don't ask me to cite data, please, because I don't have the numbers, but there is research coming out about this that I've been believing for a long time, is that we forget about the social emotional onboarding of our employees. We think more about what are the tasks they're going to do, what software do they need to learn, what are the KPIs, maybe if you have KPIs that they're going to be measuring at, what are the expectations? And those are critical. You don't want to onboard team members without those things. But often I see we're missing the most is the boat on the emotional side. So how are you integrating them into your culture? How are you integrating them into the team dynamics that have developed? How are you sharing, like, I'm a very specific type of leader, and I want to onboard my new team members to understand who and how I am wired as a leader so that we can work well together. Think about how's the best way to communicate. Are you the type of person where I need to just get to the point? Or do you want me to stop and say, how was your weekend? And tell me a little about your family. Or are you just like, I don't want to spend, that's a waste of my time. Let's just get to the point. I want to move on. It's like learning those social and emotional and communication components are often not intentional in the onboarding, journey that's created. They're forgotten components. And so it's really important to do that.
Do you find it's even more challenging with more work from home or hybrid work?
Well, I'm a fully virtual company, so it's yes, I'm sure it is. You can't just grab somebody and go run out for that coffee and let's just chat together. But it doesn't have to be a lot harder. It just has to have more intention around it, and it has to be built in with that intention. Don't just assume that new hire who's now sitting in their home office with no connection to the rest of your team is going to be the one to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm new here. I'd like to get to know you. Let's hop on a Zoom call." You need to make sure that your people on your team intentionally reach out. Like, you're going to meet with them on Tuesday at 3. And can you meet with them on, Friday at 1? And can you have lunch with them next week on Monday?
Right.
Plan it in. And because especially in virtual, you got to think about, okay, they're home all by themselves, right? Unless they're in a meeting. And so you want to make sure not only is it clear what they should be doing in that time, but also that people are reaching out. One of the things that we really, we try to recommend to our clients is a buddy system. I don't know if you've heard that term, but it's like, assign a buddy, take somebody in your company. It should be something they want to do, this person in your company. So you don't want to force it on someone who doesn't want to do it, but ask somebody to volunteer to be a buddy for the new hire. And that buddy is sort of like their, kind of the person that they can go to for all of their questions, even if they're the kind of embarrassing questions. Like one of the examples I often give is, for some companies, like if you need to go to the restroom in the middle of a team meeting, that's okay. You can go do that. Just tell people, be right back. Other companies, unacceptable. But these aren't necessarily in the employee handbook, right? Like these are cultural things. So it's like the norms. Yeah. So it's like, have a buddy that you assign to your new hire, have them be with them for the first 2-3 months. And their job is to integrate them into the culture, to teach them those sort of unknown or unspoken expectations, talk about the different people. They can be the ones like, hey, when you interact with this person, they're all about like house plants, bring up house plants and you'll never shut them up. Or, it's like the one that is their social connection to the rest of the team and to the culture. It's a really effective method.
Oh, awesome. So recruiters, what type of roles? When should I use one? Talk to me a bit about that. Like, is it for all my hires? Is it a specific kind of hire I should consider using a recruiter for? Like, let's cut through and give some clarity around the whole thing.
Yeah. And that's good. The top level answer is it depends. It depends so much.
Awesome.
Right? Of course it does. Depends on how big your company is. It depends on your needs. There's traditional recruiting services, which are usually that, like, you hear the 30% of the annual salary. It could be an expensive venture to do that kind of recruiting. And so in those cases, if you were going to use a traditional recruiter, I think you want to reserve them for more manager level because that's really quite an investment. The type of recruiting we do is very different. We're flat fee recruiting. It isn't based on salary. And so we try to be a more affordable solution for small businesses. Like I said, I designed this whole business around recruiting for small businesses. And, our clients typically, we've the ones who are like, help me with my first hire. I just don't know what I'm doing. I'm a little bit worried. I want to get it right. And then they won't hire again for years. That's totally fine. But we also have clients who are growing. They want to add, 3 to 5 people per year. They're not doing big numbers like an Amazon or something, right? But that's big for them. And they're scaling the business. And so in those cases, we can do all positions for them. Doesn't matter. It can be labor on up to senior management, up to C-level. And it can be all industries as well. And we've just become the recruiting department because they warrant that, right? Like they've got enough activity. They don't warrant a full-time recruiter in-house, but they warrant a partner that knows their culture, understands their core values, knows the kind of people who are going to fit into that piece, as well as can find the ones with the skills and all that. So that's our main focus, is culture fit recruiting.
Yes.
So, I think part of it too is assessing what skill set do you have, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur, how critical is that particular role going to be if you don't get it right? Like, is that going to cost you a lot of time, money, possibly customers, possibly coworkers? Then if that's a really critical hire, then you want to probably use an expert to help you get it done right.
Yeah.
The other piece, honestly, is time. Like, for our clients, they tend to come to us because anecdotally, it takes about 60 to 80 hours to fill one position.
No way.
Yeah. It's crazy how much time it can take, right? Especially if you want to do it right and you're not just knee jerking, hiring the first person with a good resume, but you want to get it right.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And the amount of times that people don't show up to interviews, or they, it's such a time waster. So if you're also just extremely busy, and even if you have a decent hiring process, but you're like, I cannot fit this in, I've got too much going on, too many balls in the air, everyone on my team is busy, that's another time to consider outsourcing, So that's what I mean by it depends, right? There's just so many different layers. It just, there's so many factors into making that decision.
I love flat fee. It just, I think it makes so much sense today, because it's not like in the past, I think, where you had to spend so much, probably even more time trying to find the right candidates, because you didn't have LinkedIn and other places where they're all hanging out.
Right. That is true. That is very true. It took a lot more time. I also think that for small businesses, this model is better. For larger companies, it maybe that other model works just fine. But one of the reasons why it's so high priced is, traditional recruiters are using a contingent model where you only have to pay if you fill the role, which sounds great, on one level. But what ends up happening is that recruiter is probably trying to fill 30 roles, and they'll be lucky if they fill 4 of them. So those 4 people are the ones covering the cost of the work of the other 26 that they're trying to fill, right? And that's why it just doesn't work for small businesses.
And it probably adds that veneer of, wow, if I have to get somebody, whether they're right or not, completely right or not, because I need to trigger that payment.
Yeah. Exactly. If there's an intrinsic push for fill the role as fast as possible, that's what the motivation is for that recruiter, which there's no blame here. That's just the way the model is set up.
Yeah.
Whereas when you can do flat fee, like with us, we're exclusive. You're only going to work with us. We're going to be your recruiter. We're going to work with you until we find you the right fit for that flat fee. You're paying for the service. And so we're far more committed to the quality person that we're trying to find you, that culture fit and all those pieces, because we're not driven by this need to get paid if we don't fill the role, right? It's just a really different model, really different energy behind it, and a different motivation behind it.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about recruiters, with a recruiter like yourself?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, obviously for me, it would be that we're really expensive. And that's what's tough. I mean, we're disruptors. We're trying to change that.
Yes.
Because recruiters are and can be very expensive. And we're a fraction of the cost compared to others. And so that's a shame. I think the other one, honestly, they have a very used car salesman kind of reputation, at least here in the States. I don't know about Nova Scotia, but they do here, which is very unfortunate. But, that they don't really care. Again, they're about numbers. They're about fill the role fast. I don't really care who it is. Just how can I get you the best deal? And that's a shame too. There are alternatives of recruiting firms that care about you, care about who they bring into your organization. We're much more mission driven than transaction driven. And so I think that's a misconception, but it's an earned misconception. Unfortunately, the industry has earned that misconception because of that model that it was built on from the start, the contingent model. So it's
interesting.
Shame. It's a shame.
I think in Nova Scotia, most of the players, the big players here, are very mission driven as well. It's just they have a different, they're doing the contingency model for the most part. Right?
Yeah. Which just doesn't quite work for small businesses, right? Who've got tight budgets. And
so let's say I did hire a recruiter, Erin. What does that look like? How does it what am I responsible for? What are you responsible for? How does that engagement roll out?
Yeah. So we take a partnership approach. And that, to me, if you are a small business owner and you are thinking about working with a recruiter, I would really lean into that with whatever recruiter you try to work with, is that you're in partnership. No recruiter can truly, in like a 1-hour meeting with you, understand your needs and then go find them. So there needs to be clarity about who you're looking for. And if you aren't totally clear, a good recruiter should help you by asking the right questions to get that clarity. But before they go work, there should be a lot of clarity on who it is you're looking for, what those tasks are. All the details of the job description should be figured out. But you should also be able to articulate your core values. You should be able to really articulate and understand your culture. You need to know your business really well. And again, even if you've never had to articulate before, if somebody asks you the right questions, you should be able to, answer those questions. And then in terms of the engagement, by partnership, a good recruiter is probably going to say, here's person A or candidate B. I don't necessarily recommend them. What I want from you is feedback. Put your eyes on them, watch my interview, give me feedback so that I can fine tune who we're looking for. Because the truth is no matter how much you think about it ahead of time, who you're looking for, as you start to see actual people, you start to realize, oh, wait, I did want that. Or, oh, wait, I don't want that. You start to fine tune. So be willing. That's what I mean by partnership. Be willing to give constant feedback to the recruiter so that they can continue to refine and refine and refine who they're looking for. And don't be afraid of that. And, have that clarity with them. And also just the expectation. One of the expectations I think is critically important that is different than a lot of industries is recruiters can't create human beings. Right. So, So I can't take, let's say, a bookkeeper that we're trying to fill a role for one of our clients, for example. I can't take this candidate pool and I can pick the best and the strongest for your role. But if they're missing a tool or they're missing something, I can't make them do that. I can't, refine them like you can a product. Or, I think about in construction, if the cabinet is hanging crooked, they can go fix it. We can't do that, right? We're dealing with humans. So it's also mitigating expectations on what a recruiter can do and who a recruiter can bring. So things like trying to find a unicorn, you can't expect a recruiter to do a great job finding a unicorn because unicorns just kind of don't exist, right? So you got to be willing to be a little bit flexible. You got to be willing to understand that what we're doing is we've got 1,000 maybe candidates in your city that qualify. We're going to narrow them down to your culture. And so that narrows it down to literally maybe 10 because you have a unique culture. Not everybody's going to fit your culture. And so you got to be willing to work with what you got, because the candidate pool is the candidate pool. There's not a lot we can do about that. Does that make sense? So it's mitigating and understanding expectations.
Your culture comments are bang on and about the fit. I think I moderated a leadership panel with 2 hugely successful CEOs, and their styles couldn't have been more different. Right. One of them was we consult everybody. When we hire someone, they actually interview with almost everybody in the organization, etc. And the other guy was well, really, I tell them what to do and then they just go do it. Because I'm not going to micromanage or, there's no check-ins.
Right.
Vastly different, both extremely successful.
Right.
but you'd want you want collaborative versus go off and do their own thing. You know what I mean? Like the style of the employee would have to be different to be successful in those models.
Yeah. And that's what we call your unique fit employer, your unique fit employee avatar. Okay. So that's like a mouthful, but that is exactly right. Like who's going to be successful in what we call like a player or a top talent, which are phrases I don't really like. But if somebody can be an A player at your company, but and let's say you're a bookkeeping company, for example, we used that example before, they might be an A player because they fit your culture and they fit your leadership style and the goals and your processes and everything, but they could end up being a C player at another bookkeeping firm because they don't. You've got a unique culture. You have a unique business, and you need people who are going to resonate and work well in that culture. So they're your unique fit employee. And that's who you want to look for, and that takes expertise. It takes focus. It takes an understanding, attention, all the things. So
it all comes down to, who, not how, sometimes hiring, using you as a team member. Question.
Yeah.
I put together a job description and I price it completely wrong.
Yeah.
Like, do you provide sort of feedback and guidance as to what an A player in this level and will cost us?
Yes. We do salary research as a part of our process. We have three phases technically to our process. And the first one is really like a strategy phase. So once we learn everything we need to know about the position and we've learned everything we need to know about the company, we even interview our clients' employees so that we can understand from that 360 point of view what it's like to work there. What is your culture from everyone's perspective? Yeah. Then we start doing research, and we've got competitive, a lot of recruiters have access to competitive analysis and data. Yes. So we actually back our strategies with data. How many applicants are in your area actively seeking today? How many companies are actively trying to find these people today? So how competitive is it? We come up with a profile of who we're looking for, salary research, like we just do a lot of data-driven points. Then what we do, and this is, I think, a really key point too, I like to share, is then we think about it from a marketing perspective. Recruiting is not HR. I know that so many people are going to push back on me. Recruiting is marketing and sales. It's marketing and sales. So you use marketing techniques to attract the right kind of candidates. It isn't about quantity. It is about quality. You want people, again, who are going to resonate with your culture. So the piece that you put out there, the job post, needs to speak to your target audience. Your target audience is not necessarily every bookkeeper in your city. Your target audience is the bookkeeper that'll fit your culture. So you need the job post to reflect that, to talk to them, to talk directly. You have to
almost screen out too.
Exactly. It helps you screen out people who will just be a waste of time. So you got to tell stories in it. You got to think about it from a marketing perspective. How do I attract the right candidates to my job? Yeah. Then once they're in front of you and you're talking to them about your job, now it becomes a sales conversation and not the buy my job, because that's not a good sales tactic. I'm talking about the more consultative sale. Like, do we have what you need to flourish and to thrive? And do you have what we need to flourish and thrive? Like, is it a good partnership? Is it a good match? Yeah. That's what you want to try to uncover. So when I say sales, it's not like trying to convince someone to take your job. It's learning from each other. Do we have what each other needs? What are our pain points? And can I support you and help you with yours? Can you help and support me with mine? That's the sales conversation that I'm talking about.
So interesting. Yeah. Erin, is there anything else I haven't asked you about the industry, your business, the very active recruiting that you think would be important to small business owners?
You're putting me on the spot, Wendy. All right, let me think for just a second. Erin. I know, and that's good. I love great interviewers. Thank you. Let me think. I think, okay, this is one that I think a lot of people, especially if you're going to do it yourself, which is fine, miss in interviewing is spend some time coming up with an actual recruiting process. Think about it. It is a process in your business that you should design and you should craft and curate and have intention behind. So that's one. Then bring it down to now you've got the interview as a part of that process. What is it you're really trying to uncover? And a lot of entrepreneurs, of course, focus on those skills and the talent and the experience. But what, again, they're forgetting is that culture piece. core values. Like, what are the core values that drive that candidate? Well, let me tell you, you ask them that question and they're going to look at you blankly. They don't stop and do core values exercises like businesses do. They don't know. So what you have to learn is, how do you ask the right questions in that interview to pull out and to tease out what truly are their core values? They may not be able to articulate them, but we all have them. We all live by them. So how do you, in an interview, help a candidate how do you tease out what they are? So spend time educating yourself on the kinds of questions to ask. And one of the things that this is one of our soapboxes here at Zephyr, is throw out the interrogative style of interviewing. It scares people. It shuts them down. They feel unsafe. It's like, don't make them have to back up who they are. Do it from I am so curious about you. I cannot wait to learn about you. Tell me everything about you. When you come in from that perspective, then people open up. They feel excited about interviewing with you, and they tend to be more honest and truthful and transparent about who they are than if, you're sitting there like interrogating them, which is kind of like the old.
What are your weaknesses?
Yeah. What are your weaknesses? How do you know what I did? Yeah. Like, prove to me that you did what you say you did at the other job. And, it's just like, what would so-and-so say about you if I called them today? That's a common one that's in a book that a lot of people read. And I won't name the book, but it's like, yeah, if I called your supervisor from this job, what exactly would they tell me? What would they tell me that you did wrong? Like, tell me. And you're just like, shine a light on me and tell me what I did. It's like they're guilty. They're guilty before you even get to know them, right? Like, they're guilty of being a bad employee. They're guilty of whatever that you think they're guilty of. And when you come across that way, people, first off, they're just going to say what they think you want to hear, because they're just trying to protect themselves. So learn how to do and learn how to interview, I think, would be the other.
How do people get a hold of you, Erin?
Number of ways. So we do have a website, zephyrconnects.com, and it's ZEPHYR, and it's not a common word. So I do try to spell it out. So it's Zephyr Connects, which Zephyr means a gentle breeze, in case anybody does not know. They can call us. So our number is 800. I got to look at it because I don't know off the top of my head, 204-6958. We do serve Canada and America. You did mention North America. We do serve the US and Canada. So that number works in both countries. They can also email me, which is Erin, ERIN, @zephyrconnects.com. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. I am probably the only Erin Longmoon in the world. So it's super easy to just Google my name and you will find me. That's one of my benefits of my very unusual name.
Thank you so much for sharing so much of your wisdom here today. And I think the real bottom line here is recruiting is actually a sales and marketing exercise, and you can outsource it.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Erin.
Thank you, Wendy.